at triplehfm.com.au.
Back on Communication Breakdown. We're in the studio with Jeremy Dillon. He is the writer and director of Benjamin Sniddlegrass and the Cauldron of Penguins, a movie released last year, I believe it was.
Well, no, it was actually completed last year, but released January 31st this year.
Oh, there we go.
Pretty close.
Quite an achievement for someone who is 21.
I am, yes.
To have written, directed and released a movie. I want to know how it came about.
Well, the origins of this film go back to a BBC radio show called Wittertainment, which is Dr. Mark Kermode, British film critic, and Simon Mayo, British DJ of long standing. And they've had this film program for just over 10 years. February 12th last year, they were reviewing a film, I don't know if either of you remember it, called Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief.
I know of it.
Yes.
I don't believe I watched it.
No,
I actually haven't encountered anyone who has. But Mark was reviewing it, and the gist of his review was, it was directed by Christopher Columbus, who directed the first two Harry Potter films, and he said, this film is about a nerdy kid with an awkward home life who discovers that the reason he doesn't fit in is because he's really a magical boy with a magical father he didn't know about, so he must go to magic school to learn how to fight a great evil. And it's so much of a rip-off of Harry Potter that it may as well be one of those Harry Potter parody books you used to see floating around, like Barry Trotter and the Hideous Parody, or, inventing a title, he said, Benjamin Sniddlegrass and the Cauldron of Penguins. I was listening to the podcast on the other side of the world, and I thought, now that's too good a title to waste. So at first I just mocked up a poster in Photoshop and stuck it up on the internet, but it made its way back to the program, and I started getting fan mail from Finland and the Netherlands and other corners of Europe encouraging me to go ahead and actually make this film, and I thought, well, why not? And I did it.
Wow, that's awesome.
As good a reason I've ever heard.
Yeah, to make a movie. To actually get this off the ground, what did you have to do? Because obviously costs would come into it, and manpower. How did you get your cast? Stuff like that.
It was all self-financed. I paid for it all off my own back, and it ended up costing me around $10,000. But I didn't have $10,000 when I started off. So it was kind of structured like a series of short films. We shot it on 7 days over about a 4-month period. So every time I had enough money to go for another shooting day, I'd set one up and would go for another day, and it'd be like shooting another short film.
Did you have any process like where you raised money for it, or
no?
I just out of your own pocket.
Cash flow. The money flowed into me and out into the movie.
8 meagre in for many days of the week.
Yeah,
that's how I live.
But the cast mainly came from amateur musical societies throughout theatre. I go along to shows, and it's kind of scouting for cast members for films. My lead, Andrew Gristy, who plays Benjamin Sniddlegrass, who's this... I sort of built the role for him because he's this guy with this head of curly red hair, and he's a very charismatic guy and very strong performer. And I've always thought he can play really nerdy, but in person he's really charismatic. So if I could write him a part that went arced from one of those to the other, it'd be a real perfect showcase for him. So that's where I got him. Most of my cast came from musical theatre, except for Mr. Pentangle, who was played by Alec Dumagy, who is a radio DJ from Queensland.
The actors that you did use, they were proper actors and actresses, and they're very keen to do this, but they're not professionals yet. How did they feel about working in it? Were they as psyched as you were about making it and stuff?
Yes, they were. Once I talked them all into it, yeah, they were all very enthusiastic, and they were all on board with the script and with the tone, and I felt like we were all united with a common purpose.
Well, we're going to play some music right now, but after that we're going to come back and chat to Jeremy a little bit more about this, because this is very interesting. We're in the studio with Jeremy Dillon.
And just before those sponsor announcements, we played the Rolling Stones,
which was your request.
Yes,
it was indeed,
and a good one at that.
Thank you. I've been listening to a lot of Stones at the moment, and I do anyway. But I'm in the middle of writing a film about Keith Richards, set during the making of Exile on Main Street. So I have the Stones on the brain at the moment.
Yeah, it was an awesome request.
Good thing.
And we'll have more requests from you coming up. But right now, I'd like to dwell on the film a little bit more.
Maybe the elephant in the room part of the film, which is that you had Stephen Fry as the narrator.
Which
The
is just the coolest thing that ever existed.
The real human life one.
Yeah. Not someone putting on a voice.
Not just someone called Stephen Fry, but actually Stephen Fry.
So how did that come about?
The film opens with a sort of prologue section, which is narrated, and I wrote that in the script with kind of his voice in mind, never thinking that I would actually get him. But when we were starting into production, he came to Australia to film a documentary on language for the BBC and to do a couple of one-man shows at the Sydney Opera House. And I thought, what's the worst that could happen? So I was on the front row for the first one-man show, and I got a copy of the script, printed it out, put it in an A4 envelope with a note saying, "Dear Stephen, I've idolised you since I was 6 years old, please narrate my film," or words to that effect. And I took that along, and as he was about to walk off stage and he was doing his bows, I walked up and handed it to him, and he left with it. And I thought, well, I gave it a shot, I'm not going to hear anything. But 2 days later, I booted my laptop up, and there was an email from him saying, "I've got half an hour free this afternoon, come down to my hotel and I'll do this for you."
Wow.
That is insane.
So I potted off down to the Park Hyatt with my recording gear. He managed to get them to close the private members bar. We went in there, did the recording. He nailed it in one take, and then sat around chatting for a bit. And he had the Strokes waiting outside. Who were apparently a big Stephen Fry fan. So
Wow.
I went to talk for him. And was like, no, I've got to do this narration first. Sorry, guys.
He palmed
God.
the Strokes off for you. That's particularly impressive.
That
to
is
Emmeline.
so impressive. I'm going to die.
Yeah, she loves the Strokes more than anything else in the world.
Oh my God. I'm just imagining Stephen Fry and the Strokes in the same room right now and like, oh, that's amazing.
Sorry, the Strokes. I'm just going to do this.
Jeremy Dillon's in the room. That's amazing. And it sounds great as well. It sounds so good. He did a really good job. So meeting someone that you've idolised for so long, what was that like?
It was incredible, and he was exactly the Stephen Fry you would want him to be. Like, we were meant to meet at 3 o'clock. 2 minutes past 3, he walks up to me and says, "Oh, so sorry I'm late. I love your blazer." Which
really?
apparently the jacket I was wearing looked like his King's College Cambridge uniform.
Yeah.
But he was intensely lovely to me. He chatted to me for a long time afterwards. So how are you paying for this film? Is it a full-length film? Is it, yeah, feature. So, but you're a young person. Surely you don't have any money.
What a legend.
Yeah.
Little did he know.
Yes.
You didn't.
That's amazing. And so, can you give us a bit of a rundown of what the film is actually about?
Certainly. Well, Benjamin Sniddlegrass and the Cauldron of Penguins tells the story of Benjamin Sniddlegrass, a nerdy redhead who loves skiffle music from Cockfosters in the UK, who discovers that the reason he doesn't fit in is actually part of an ancient magical sect of wizards, and he must journey to Australia under the watchful eye of Mr. Pentangle to learn magic at Fairport Academy under the tutelage of eccentric Bavarian filmmaker Werner Herzog. But while a romance blooms with enigmatic mod Scarlett McKenna, he must face the evil machinations of the malevolent Lord Emmerich, a man with the head of a gorilla. Also, skiffle music.
You memorised that. You memorised that.
Well, I have had to deliver it a few times, because once you bring that title out, people are a little baffled.
Yeah, it doesn't give much away.
Just roll it off anytime. So what's your movie about?
Well, I'd love to tell you. Okay, so obviously it's not so much a Harry Potter ripoff as you said. You got it from this you got the idea from this BBC radio show.
Well,
But you did base it on the storyline of Harry Potter.
Well, I mean, technically, it's a parody of Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, but I haven't seen Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief.
And you weren't about to?
No, not after Mark's review. But seeing as the thesis of his review was that it's a total ripoff of Harry Potter, I just thought, well, I have read and seen Harry Potter, so I can just go off that. So the structure is fairly similar to the structure of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone.
Yes. Okay, well, like Stephen Fry, I'm very intrigued to know how such a young person pulled this entire thing off. So I'm really keen to know where you did a lot of the shooting and how you worked with the actors and the actresses and stuff, because they were all young as well.
Well, most of them, except for there were a couple of, I don't want to say,
Mature?
more mature. Yes, precisely, Emmeline. More mature. Dorian Newstead, who played Werner Herzog, and Linda Newstead, who played Aunt David Morrissey, were both a little more mature than the rest of my cast. The locations are interesting because about a month before we started shooting, I went to a gig at the Exchange Hotel on Oxford Street. I went to see a band called Panzer Queen, and I noticed while I was there that every room in the Exchange Hotel was decorated completely differently. They're like rooms from different buildings, and I thought, well, you know, this room could work as the performance hall in the magic school, and this room with this pool table, it could be the student bar where the kids all hang out, and this room with its weird overhead line, this could be the villain's lair. So I ended up tailoring the script, which I was in the process of rewriting at the time, so that about half the locations were all at the Exchange Hotel, but it doubles as a number of different buildings. And I also started thinking about the magic school, because, you know, magic schools in these kind of films, they never look like actual schools. It's the ritziest...
Like castles.
Yeah, it's castle. They look like the ritziest Oxbridge education you could possibly have. And I thought, why not have one that looks like a real school? Why not use a real school? So I went back and I approached the principal, Mr. Garrard, of my old alma mater, Epping Boys High School, and we ended up shooting Fairport Academy there. Which is a little weird, actually, going back into this place that I'd left 3 years earlier, and setting up lights in the music rooms and the school hall and bringing a bunch of extras in.
Pretty cool way to go back, though. Being like, what have you been doing after school? Oh, just making a movie, whatever.
So that was a nice experience. We shot the school dorm scenes in a motel near my school, which was an interesting shoot, actually, because there's these scenes where Ben wakes up, he's having these horrific nightmares where his dreams are being invaded by Lord Emmerich, and Scarlett, who's the sort of quasi-love interest character, comes and knocks on his door and opens it up, and they have these feverish discussions out in the hallway, both not terribly dressed at the time, and I'm not quite sure what the other guests in the hotel thought we were making.
What kind of film?
Yeah, there's sort of this attractive brunette running around in lingerie, and
with this cheesy dialogue.
Hey,
And a redhead.
Could give people ideas.
what do you mean cheesy dialogue?
What about the music is actually a huge part of it, skiffle music in
Indeed.
particular. What made you choose that genre out of all of them?
Well, Mark Kermode, the film critic who set this whole thing off, is in a skiffle band. He plays double bass in a skiffle band called the Dodge Brothers. But a part of it was, I wanted Ben to look up to someone, to have some kind of heroic ideal, and I wanted to be an Elvis type of figure, because my mind kept going to these stories of Keith Richards and John Lennon and people who were growing up in sort of lower middle class, working class neighbourhoods in the 50s, and having these little dance set radios and listening to Chuck Berry and Elvis and getting this inspiration to follow their dreams. So I thought Ben should have someone like that. And because I obviously wasn't going to be able to license the real Elvis, I thought, I'll create a rock star. So I created this character called Johnny Leroy. It's Johnny Leroy and the Impulsives, who are this skiffle rockabilly band who are very much similar to the early Elvis recordings, the Sun Sessions. So I got this trio together, John Sewell, who's a punk singer from a band called Jump the Shark, to play Johnny Leroy, and he's a redhead, so that tied in perfectly. Riley Marr, who's a guitarist I know, who I've used on some soundtracks.
And we've had on the show.
Oh, excellent.
Yes.
And he didn't lose, the ratings didn't just drop out when he comes up?
Not at all.
Okay. And Tim Sampson, who's a very, very talented bassist. And I got them into a studio in Riverwood, and we worked up these arrangements of these sort of blues-based songs and turned them into rockabilly numbers. And there's one called Famous, which is the main song that recurs a couple of times in the film, and another one called Judgment Day, and they're both great songs. Yeah, the music plays a real integral part to this film, and it sort of weaves through the plot.
We're going to play one of Johnny Leroy and
Famous.
the Impulsives songs right now.
Yes, indeed, Famous. So the
It really, in a musical way, really does a good job of summing up the mood of the movie, I reckon.
Thank you. That was the idea.
Yeah, so I reckon this is if you like this, you're going to enjoy the movie. So we're going to play that right now and
then
come
we'll,
back.
We'll tell you where you can actually see the movie.
Yes, we will. We're going to come back and chat a bit more to Jeremy after this. You are back listening to Communication Breakdown, and we have Jeremy Dillon in the studio with us. That was very cool.
That was the song from his movie Sniddlegrass.
Benjamin Sniddlegrass.
I always forget his first name.
Penguin.
Yes, Benjamin Sniddlegrass.
Better than me. Better than saying Jeremy Sniddlegrass.
To be fair, it is quite a complex name.
It is a complex name. That's why it's so intriguing.
Yes.
Stephen Fry called me Jeremy Dyson at one point, so don't feel too bad.
So I'm interested in knowing about the premiere and the release of this movie.
Well, we premiered it at the Dendy in Newtown, January 31st this year, and I was a bit nervous on how that was going to go, but we sold it out, 125 seats, and there was over half the people there weren't cast or crew or guests. They were just general public who wanted to see the movie and came along, and we put it out on a DVD and digital download, and now I've sort of gone back and recut it into a more condensed, pacier version.
The director's cut.
Well, actually, it's the producer's cut. The first one was the director's cut. Producer's cut's better because it's shorter. And that's up on YouTube now. If you go to benjaminsniddlegrass.com, you can find it, or if you just search Benjamin Sniddlegrass and the Cauldron of Penguins on YouTube, you'll be able to find it.
You won't get any other matches, I'm assuming.
Well, actually, there's a couple of fan trailers that'll pop up.
Oh, okay. And what's in the pipeline at the moment? You mentioned that you were doing the Keith Richards movie. Oh,
Yes.
well, a script at the moment.
Yeah, I'm writing that at the moment.
Yeah.
The last two things I shot, I went to Nashville in June and shot my first feature-length documentary in the middle of editing that at the moment. And I just wrapped a short film called Access All Areas, which is about a quest for love and celebrity underwear, which we shot out at the Acer Arena. And I'm in the middle of cutting that, and that's going to do the rounds and the festivals over the next 6 months or so.
Great.
Well, yeah, it's been very good to talk to you.
It's been awesome.
Jeremy.
Well, it was an absolute pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
That's no worries. And if you release anything else soon, we'd love to have you back on.